Hi friends, welcome back to the Worthy Podcast. This is Annie Gardner, where we're going to talk about boldness meets purpose. Join us as we explore powerful stories of faith, resilience, and courage, embracing the challenges that shape us and stepping confidently into the calling God has placed on our lives. Let's have the conversations that truly matter. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Worthy Podcast, where we talk about being bold, doing hard things, and walking in the calling that God placed on your life. My name is Annie Gardner. I'm your host for the Worthy Podcast. I am excited to have on the show today my husband, John Gardner.
Hello.
Don't worry, he's not as soft-spoken as he thinks he is. The reason John's on the podcast today is we're talking about marriage. And back in December, we posted on social media kind of like a question box for people to ask anything they wanted regarding single life, marriage, and all the things. I do want to give a little bit of background, honey, and you can help me. We are a blended family. I was a single mom for 13 years. I had my son when I was 23 years old, and John was previously married. We have two older kids, a daughter who's 23, she'll be 23 in May
22nd.
And then our other son, he just turned 21, and then our baby is about to turn 18. So,
son, I call him.
Yeah, we are a blended family, and so I'm gonna just start on all the questions.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. So one of the questions people asked us is, and I'll let you answer this first. What attracted us to each other besides looks?
Besides looks. Well, it's kind of a long story, but Steve gets a lot of credit for that. So Steve Pignate, one of the pastors at Mercy Culture where I was going, they had a season where they lived with me for a little bit. And he kept showing me pictures. Oh, you need to meet my cousin. You need to meet my cousin. And I was like, no. Having been divorced, I wasn't.
I'm the cousin.
Yeah, she's the cousin. I know that. I guess nobody else knows that. Anyways, he kept trying to get me to meet you. Kept trying to get meet me, and I thought it was never going to happen. And then, typical Steve fashion, he's like, "Hey, we're having dinner. Come meet us." Mm-hmm. And then I met her, and she was very attractive. I was like, "Oh, okay." But she was very nice. She was new to the Lord, which was like, okay. So, she's a Christian, my number one. Number two, she was Steve's cousin, mm-hmm. and he's one of the associate pastors. So then she had a lot of credibility right off the bat. The other thing was I was not interested in dating. Mm-hmm. I was either going to court or I wasn't going to date. Mm-hmm. And so there are a couple little things that made me go, okay. She shared her food with me. It was awesome.
Yeah, I was generous.
I'm not a small guy, and I ate a lot of food, and I had finished mine, and she's like, oh, you can have mine. I'm like, okay. The other thing that did it for me was Hadassah. Hadassah loved Annie. And
So Hadassah's my little niece, who at the time was 3, I think, 2 or 3.
3? Okay.
2 or 3.
And yeah, so Hadassah is a very discerning child. Mm-hmm. She either likes you or she doesn't like you. And she doesn't like a lot of people. It's not that she doesn't like them. She's just not.
She doesn't want to be affectionate with everybody.
Yeah, she doesn't want to be affectionate with people. And she was very affectionate with Annie. And she was very affectionate with me. We were buddies. So I felt like I could tell that Annie noticed that Hadassah really liked me. And he was like, well, she doesn't like anybody. She likes John, so he must be all right. And so at some point, we exchanged phone numbers, had a pretty upfront and honest conversation about where we each had been in life, and I think I was very direct. I was like, hey, I'm not just going to date.
Yeah.
You're in Phoenix. I'm in Fort Worth.
So we dated long distance for 2 years.
2 years, yep.
And what attracted me to John was, well, hello, he's 6'4". And so I know that the question says besides looks. But I think also looks matters. If someone says looks don't matter, it's a lie. You need to be attracted to the person that you're going to pursue. I mean, that's just, a given can it grow into more things? Yeah, but I think that initial attraction is important.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah. John is, as you can see, everybody, a man. He knows what he wants. He's well-spoken, educated, is a go-getter. He has a heart for the Lord. I call John Bear because he is a softie, but he's also like a grizzly bear. And so those are the things that attracted me to him. And he leads well.
Well, the joke in our house is I tend to growl a little bit. When I don't like something, I'm like,
Yeah. And like you see those memes of like the serious like lion and then like that little happy and then there's me. So yeah.
That only happens behind closed doors. I've got an image.
Yeah. Okay, the next question.
Next question.
I'll let you answer it first.
Or you're going to let me answer first?
Yeah, because the question was, how do we navigate our cultural differences? Obviously.
So I grew up in a family that's not very affectionate, that, we could talk to each other once a month. I've got one child is in going to college in Minneapolis, one child's in middle of nowhere, Iowa, and then Joey's in Phoenix. And so for me, that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
I lived in Chicago. I lived over here. I lived over there. And then, here comes Annie's family, and she's got a ton of tias and
you have a lot of aunts and uncles.
A million cousins, and everybody was like, "Hey, John!" And they're hugging on me, and her aunts are kissing on me, and I'm like, "Ah." But I grew to really love that because they're so affectionate, and love me. And then of course I benefit because when the aunts are around,
they don't on John.
They dote on me, but they're also very traditional. Mm-hmm. So I get my plate made for me when Annie's aunts are around. It's awesome.
We are not. It's so funny because when that question came up, as far as cultural differences, I don't think that John and I have had challenges regarding our cultural differences. I think that it's benefited both of us because I was raised in a very traditional household and John was not. And so John makes
traditional
Hispanic. I'm talking about Hispanic.
Okay.
Well,
as opposed to
like
traditional
I don't
white.
know no, the American culture is not like the Latino culture.
Of course, that's my
because
point.
I was raised in a house where my mom stayed home, made every meal from scratch, served my dad first. He sat down and he was served first. If my grandpa was home, he was served first. And my dad worked. And so then, I became a single mom. I'm raising a son who can cook and do all the things now. And then I married John, and John can cook, clean, do all the things. So it's it's wild.
Well, there's a little background there too. My father passed away when I was relatively young. Mm-hmm. My mother was a steel magnolia, type A,
Yeah.
She showed me I can iron better than Annie can.
Yeah,
I'll iron
and
Annie's
he can.
Clothes. I even made money in college ironing clothes for my roommates
so
because
funny.
my mom was like, "You're going to know how to do these things."
Yeah.
And she was the breadwinner. She was a real estate agent back in years and years and years ago, and she was like, "Hey, I'm not going to be here to do these for you. You need to learn how to do these things."
And so I think we got the best of both worlds because I now live in a home where my husband works outside the house. And when he's home, every morning he makes me coffee. And I cook, I would say 70% of the time I cook. But then John cooks also. And so it's not where, I think if you're in a relationship like us, I think we both won because John isn't the type of man where he's like, I'm hungry, feed me, or like, I expect this. The house is a certain way because I was raised that way, not because John's like, I expect the house to be clean. I expect you to make me meals. I was just raised that way. So if you come and our house is clean or I'm cooking, it's because I want to do that. Yeah. Now, I was also a very rebellious teenager because my dad did expect that. So when he would say those things, I didn't want to do it. And I think because John is just so sweet about it and he's so happy that we benefit from it.
Happy?
Yeah,
okay.
Like you're happy that I'm doing it. You're not like, make me dinner,
she
make
cooks
me breakfast.
Food. I'm so happy. For me, that's... acts of service maybe.
Yeah.
When she does that for me, and it could be the most simplest thing ever, and she just cooked for me. I'm so happy.
So I don't know if like there are cultural differences, but I think that we like them.
Yeah. I mean, we benefit from.
Yeah, we
differences.
benefit from it.
You know, she's often said to me, she loves doing stuff for me because I don't ask for it and I don't expect it.
Yeah.
If something's not done, then I just do it. I always kind of have that philosophy in life. You see a need, you feel the need. Mm-hmm. And I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's good for us. It has worked out beautifully, I might say.
I'm not going to lie. Since I'm commuting for work a lot more, there is an expectation that some more things are done for me just because I'm gone a lot and I'm not there to do it.
Right. But I don't think that has anything, to your point, I think that if you are married and you are home and your husband is outside of the house working, that should be everyone's expectation. It's not because I'm Hispanic that it's the expectation.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
I guess, yeah.
Okay. The next question, which I'm excited to talk about, is they asked us, how did we steward our dating, and what were boundaries and stuff that we had in place?
So as far as stewarding the dating, I think it worked out. You know, I feel like it was definitely God's providence because we were long distance. Because having been married before, we weren't virgins, and so, well, I mean, let's say it like it is. The temptation is there when you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
it's a little easier to go, okay, and to kind of stand that straight and narrow. And so we really needed the distance to keep us honest, but also it helped us become better friends because just talking on the phone, we became really good friends instead of the other side of it being the focus.
Right.
Which
Yeah,
is where
that's
I think
true.
a lot of people lose their way. They get so caught up on that. Now, obviously, we weren't perfect, but you know, as far as
We had strong boundaries in place.
strong boundaries for
also.
sure. Like for instance, when she would, I'd fly her back and forth. So when she was in town, she stayed with Steve.
I say with Steve and Esther.
Yeah, you stayed with Steve and Esther.
John would pick me up. Okay, so any lady listening to this, if a guy wants to date you and pursue you, he will. John and I dated long distance for 2 years, and he flew me to Texas every other weekend and would pick me up from the airport, take me to my cousin's house, drop me off, pick me up the next day to take me on a date, take me back to my cousin's house, drop me off.
Walk her to the door.
Yes.
Get out of my car. For you young men out there, if you sit in your car and you honk the horn, you're done.
Yeah. And then Sunday we'd go to church, worship, pray together, go to lunch. Then he would take me back to the airport. And it was unto the Lord. And it was very thought out. Like, how do we steward our relationship and have boundaries in place?
Right.
Because we had come from places where there were no boundaries,
Right, we weren't living
and
our
there were
best
no
lives.
accountability. And so now we had different accountability.
And for clarification, you know, having been married before and having a really devastating, nasty divorce, I knew exactly what not to do.
Yeah.
So I was very deliberate and was like, I'm not doing these things that I have done in the past. Because clearly it doesn't work. And I think most people know your story at this point.
Yeah.
I got my own story that's not great. You know, I definitely thank God for Pastor Landon moving next door to me.
Yeah.
You know? But that's a whole nother story. But that, you know, I was going this way, 90 degrees from the Lord, you know. Thought I was a good person. I was going to be fine. Even though I knew I'd grown up in the church. And
When you were saved and Pastor Landon ministered to you, because our pastor used to be John's neighbor, what were some boundaries or some things that he helped you with that you were like, okay, yes, this is how I'm going to steward?
There's so many.
Give us a few.
Gosh, you know, the biggest one, well, I watched your podcast, and I'm gonna kind of talk about how I was so direct to the point of rudeness. And in my head, what I was saying was fine, because it's like to the point, no fluff, and it could be hurtful to people. Mm-hmm. And Pastor Landon, even, gosh, it's been almost 5, maybe even 6 years ago. Early on, he was like, John, You know, and those of you who know Pastor Landon, he's going to kick you in the teeth, and you're going to go, oh, yeah, that's so true. Do it again. Mm-hmm. And he was like, John, you can say anything as long as you say it in love. And so I have learned through time, because when he first met me, I was not a very happy individual. I was not living the best life, was pretty irritated with life in general. You know, you on the outside, you have this, everybody thinks everything's put together, but behind closed doors, you're just, you know, it's not good. Anyways, that's the number one thing that he did. I laugh about the story how I went to his house, had fallen away completely pretty much, and he let me know he was a pastor. He asked me to help him move a couch.
Yeah.
And he told me he's a pastor, they're starting a church. And I started asking questions. He goes, hold on. You haven't done the work. Here's 5 books.
Yeah.
I need you to read all of them, and then you come back with your questions. So I read 5 books in like a week because I was, you know, it's like sometimes you know something's missing, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's obvious to a lot of people. It was not obvious to me. And I like to think I'm a fairly intelligent person. Mm-hmm. Big blind spot. And so I remember him laughing at me. He goes, you read all 5 of those? I said, ask me a question about them. I'll tell you. You know, well, what do you think?
Oh, my gosh.
And I learned that I just had everything backwards. You know, Blessed Life by Robert Morris, How to Worship the King, who I can't tell you who it is. I'd have to go look it up. Good Morning, Holy Spirit, I think it is.
Oh, I love that book,
that one. And there was 2 others, which I'd have to go look up to say what they were. But I had so many things backwards. So, and I was very, very blessed and fortunate because the church was so small then. I got a lot of one-on-one with a lot of the people who are now pastors at the church.
Yeah.
And most of them will tell you that I smile a lot more. My demeanor's a lot softer. Mm-hmm. You've probably helped with that. You get some credit for that as well, right?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Because you are very direct. I see, like right now, the offense that people carry is wild to me. But I'm also married to you, and I was in corporate for 20 years, and I worked in a male-dominated environment, and so I think it's wild when I hear of offense in men because their feelings are hurt. Just because I think that's a lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, but also because I'm married to you and you do say things in love, but sometimes things in love are, hurtful. Like,
yes.
You know, they're direct and they do hurt feelings, but it's like sometimes you just kind of need that, like, what did you say? Like that punch in the teeth or kick in the teeth?
Yeah.
I could never say these sayings right.
I'm always like, no, babe, that's not it.
You need these, what is it?
Yeah, a kick in the teeth, basically.
Kick in the teeth, you know, for accountability or, you know, to teach you something. And so for us, it's really directness.
Well, you can't. So men, the more we like each other, the more we tend to harass each other, berate each other, make fun of each other. And you can't do that in a male-female because it's a different dynamic. So
yeah, that's good.
When we first got married, I was, you know, I was in law enforcement, fire service. I was a fire marshal, and that's almost to the point of hazing.
Yeah.
And it's just, that was my norm. And then I went in construction after 9/11, and then the pilots, you got a bunch of type A guys that we're going to harass each other as well. And it's in fun, and it's, the more you like someone, the more you do that. And so then when you get married, I can remember, you know, early on, I would do that to you, like, hey, babe, you can't talk to me like that. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Babe, I'm just joking with you. And you're like,
I'm like, I'm not your sister.
yeah, my little, some of you guys know we did the voiceover, and I call her the hot pepper because she's little, 5'1" Latina, and I'm slightly scared of her.
Good. I'm going to go to the next question.
Not really.
That's funny.
Okay. You keeping us on task?
Yeah, I'm keeping us on task.
That's
okay.
your job, yeah.
So now we talked about boundaries in our dating. I hope we answered that. How do we steward our marriage? As far as like, what does honor look like for us in our marriage, and how do we set up boundaries in our marriage? And I can start if you want.
Yeah, why don't you start?
So, for example, for John and I'm going to say 95% of the time, because there's like one-offs. Like I text Nate once in a while about the podcast or whatever,
sure.
Or like art.
Oh, yeah. I
but
understand what
we
you're saying now.
never text anyone from the opposite sex by, like, it's always a text with both of us on there.
Right.
So it is to live above reproach. So
Yeah, for sure.
if it's family, that's one thing. But if I am going to communicate to another man, even if he's a friend, about getting our families to, I don't even know. Like, there would be no reason.
I mean, it's
for me
kind
to
of
text the
all-encompassing.
guy.
We try to do it in everything, and if we don't do it, there's been a time where I've sent a text, not thinking about it, and I go, oh, hold on, I'll copy it, send it to her, or I'll copy it and then resend it to both people.
Yeah. So we always, it seems like the smallest thing, but we always try to honor one another by including each other in text messages.
Yeah.
Or if there's like that one-off, we always talk about it. And it's honor, it's above reproach. And it's also like, you don't ever want to be too familiar with a person from the opposite sex.
Right.
Yeah, we have friends. We have a lot of friends who are married. We have friends that are younger, right?
Yeah.
But there's always there's a solid line that we don't cross.
Well, even our
honor.
phones, right? We share our locations constantly.
Yeah.
She knows my passwords
And
to
it's
my
not
phone.
even a big deal.
No, like it's literally that meme that you see where the guy goes to grab the girl's phone and she's like chomps her food down. That would be Annie. We're not even worried about what's in the phones.
Yeah.
I could care less.
Yeah.
Or I'll get a weird text, like one of those, what do you call it? The phishing text. Oh, hello. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
what? And I'm showing her, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
So yeah, it takes some effort, but once you get used to doing it, then it can become second nature, and it makes it so that there's, like you said, we're above reproach even with each other.
Yeah. And there is, I mean, to us, it's common sense, but I think that it honestly might not be for some people. Like, John travels for work.
Yeah.
And he's a pilot, he flies corporate. And then
Not
there are
corporate.
women, what do you call it?
In the
Commercial.
airlines. Corporate's going to be the little jets. I'm actually in
Commercial.
I'm in
You fly-
I'm in the airlines.
Yeah. Okay.
It's way different.
It's the same to me. What I was trying to say was, when he's with women, he doesn't go eat with them.
Right.
Like, there is
Flight attendants.
the flight
So
attendants.
I'll never go with the flight attendant to dinner by herself.
Yeah.
If I have a female first officer, I won't go with her by herself.
Right.
I'll make sure it's the whole crew if we do that, or I'll go eat by myself just because, and it's a small thing, but, I sort of feel like the enemy's always looking for the cracks in your armor.
Yeah.
And for a lot of men, that's a crack.
Yeah.
It's always a crack. You got some young, good-looking flight attendant, you're not at home, you're 1,000 miles away from home, and your inhibitions maybe go down, and you're like, nope. We used to have a saying in the airlines, I think it's hilarious. It's, the wings will get you girls, but the girls will get your wings. Mm-hmm. And so, that's sort of a mentorship thing with these new kids coming in now, and you're like, hey.
Yeah. And then John and I hardly drink anyway, but we definitely don't in those settings.
Oh, absolutely
Like,
not.
there is you just can't give room for the enemy to, like you said, like, there
There's
can't
nothing
be a
wrong
crack.
with drinking, but
But not in those settings.
I mean, think about it. The people that have had problems in their lives, when have they had problems? It's when they're drinking or they drink to get drunk and their ambitions go down and they make stupid decisions. So, we'll go out and have a glass of wine with the steak or something, or
Us.
Just us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and generally almost never in mixed company. Again, there's no issue with drinking.
Right.
It's, are you being smart? Are you stewarding your body? Are you stewarding your mind?
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in the position for something to happen that is going to ruin your life.
Right. Yeah, I think those are good
I
boundaries.
pursued you for so long. Why would I do something so stupid
Yeah,
that,
that's right.
But think about it. A couple minutes or, a dinner with someone that could ruin the rest of your life. Why would you do such a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's such a disconnect there. It's somewhat baffling to me because it's so out of the realm of possibility now because the way we've been stewarded by other people. But stewarding ourselves by learning from them, that it's like, well, why would I ever put myself in a position that's going to cause me to lose?
Yeah.
And
we also don't speak badly about each other or each other to other people.
I'm usually pretty good about that. Sometimes because I love her, I like to.
No, but we don't like.
But I do make fun of you sometimes.
I don't run to someone.
I see.
And share dirty laundry. Like we are very intentional about who we allow in our marriage to speak over us and cover us. And it's just like I'm going to say as a wife, you have to be very intentional on who you say anything about your husband, because we're not perfect, but a good friend who hears from the Lord, if I'm expressing, I'm frustrated with John, or I have these challenges in our marriage, a good friend from the Lord will say and has said, okay, step back and ask, how am I accountable? How am I, what is my part in whatever frustration?
Absolutely.
Versus someone who is led by their flesh would say, oh, you're tolerating that from him? I wouldn't put up with him.
Right.
That is a red flag. If you have any friend who will say, I would never tolerate that from him, that is not a friend. That is someone who is led by their flesh, and I would even say has the Jezebel spirit over them. And I would never share anything with them ever again if that's what they lead with.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's so damaging. Like, you're now having this conversation where you're talking about your husband, and it's like terrible. I luckily have not experienced that, but I've heard of people like in their marriages, and that's the feedback that they get. And I'm like, literally, that's like, talk about stabbing your marriage and just.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you never complain to family.
No.
Because they're always going to take your side, whether you're right or wrong, and there's only half of the story.
Yeah.
There's some wisdom, though, that I can't tell you where I heard it from, but it said, surround yourself with confidants that are going to advocate for your spouse.
Yeah.
That are going to actually do pretty much exactly what you said.
Yeah.
You want somebody that's going to take your wife's side and point out what because I think I'm right a lot.
It's true.
So do you, but.
It's also true.
Yeah. But, if I got somebody like there's a handful of people that I could talk to.
Yeah.
And they go exactly what you said. We're like, well, consider her side.
Yeah.
Help you kind of empathize and understand and see the other side of it, because we're all kind of egocentric.
Yeah. And I would just never allow anybody to tear down my husband. No. Like, I'm so intolerant of that.
Oh, yeah. She's mama bear when it comes to people. And it's funny because someone will say something to me and she'll be livid, and I'm like, I had no idea that she felt like they were messing with me somehow, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
And she's all like, oh.
I feel strongly about honor.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, the next question, I don't like it, is how do we steward our budgets in our marriage?
Well, in
an honoring way.
In an honoring way. Oh, is that a prompt for me? So I think it's funny how dynamics work, because usually you're going to marry, one's a spender and one's a saver, and I'm a saver. I tend to be very, here's the spreadsheet, here's what we're doing. And she's like, oh, but we got this. And then, you throw in 3 kids. 3
grown kids.
Yeah. And, 2 of them are in college. One's about to either go to trade school, or he's not 100% sure. 17, he doesn't know what he wants to do yet. He's about to be 18. But you always have the unexpected expenses.
Yeah.
But then you can't, I'm going to be fully authentic and say, I probably grew up in a spirit of poverty. We didn't have money. My dad passed away when we were young. My mom worked all the time. And it was, there were some times, like I can remember in college, I had enough money for a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. So then I and then I had grandparents that were, you may not know what the Dust Bowl is, but they had Dust Bowl. So they literally hoarded and saved everything. And so sometimes that's a battle. And, we do very well, but sometimes I'm like, And so Annie.
It is, our mindsets are different. We budget knowing also, because I know that people see like, we have older kids, and I'm going to tell you that older kids are more expensive than little kids.
Yeah.
And they eat a lot more.
Oh, those two boys?
And I grew up knowing that the Lord was my provider.
Absolutely.
And so when I met John, I know that when he was like, okay, I'm going to save money. And I think all guys, I'm going to say most of guys are this way. He's like, I'm not going to spend money. So I'm going to stay home. I'm going to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the whole week. And I could never do that. I wasn't like buying coffee all the time. And we have this rule. If you follow me on social, we don't go get coffee, let alone every day, and spend $7 on a treat. Like, save that money.
We do it occasionally. We'll do it as a treat.
Yeah, but it's not like the norm for people is
Right.
like, oh, I'm going to go buy a Monster or a coffee. Like, that one is so unhealthy. But two, that is bad stewardship of your finances.
When you can do other things with it. And so when you start looking at about how much you're spending on certain things,
Yeah.
you know, for me, it's not about the money. It's about the freedom the money gives you to maybe pour into somebody or to go do that thing or to do the last minute thing, you know, for instance.
Talk about tithing with our budget.
Tithing. So I had so many things backwards.
What is tithing?
Tithing is your 10%.
For someone who has no idea what we're talking
Someone who has
about.
no percent. Well, I mean, it started back in the Old Testament, right? And there are some people that believe that it's not forward, but it's your first and your best. So we're very strict about that. And part of that is because I spent a lot of years not tithing, not even realizing that, you know, as Pastor Landon puts it, you know, we're kind of stealing from God. It's all his, and he lets us keep 90% of it.
Right.
And so, you know, and you need to do it with a cheerful heart. You need to have that gratitude that a lot of people, I feel like, lack these days. And, you know, sometimes budgets are tight and you're like, oh, but the tithe is the last thing to go. It's the first thing to go out, the last thing to go. And I think we get it twisted and we're like, oh, well, I don't have that. But they pay their taxes.
Yeah.
You know, give to Caesar's what Caesar's. But, yeah, so tithing for me, when I started tithing, it changed everything. It's sort of like every time I needed something, it showed up.
Yeah.
You know, once I started tithing and got my mind right and, you know, kind of an offshoot of that, but one of those books talked about you go to church not to get something, but to give something. Church is for God. It's not for us.
Yeah.
And so once I got all these things that were twisted for so many years, and I'm like,
But why do we tithe?
why do we tithe?
Yes.
Because it's God's. I mean,
What does that mean?
what does that mean? The first 10% is his. I mean, it's all his. But in the Bible, it says you're supposed to give your 10%. You know, some people want to get hung up on the word produce. I don't think produce and like vegetables and all that. I think production. Whatever you build, whatever you do, it's all guided by God anyway. So you've got to give your 10% to him.
First.
Your first and your best.
Okay.
That includes your kids,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
That's been a hard one. You know, and I'm not going to lie, my struggle is I'm doing this myself. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But it's not me doing it. God put me in the position for things to happen. You know, anytime something just falls in place and you're like, wow, I was lucky. That's not luck. That's providence. That's the Lord setting the dominoes up to fall in your favor because you're following him and you're doing what he's asking you to do. Does that make sense? Okay.
I just want to make sure we were clear because not everyone understands what we're talking about.
And there are some of those, you know, Facebook prophets that say, oh, well, that's not under the New Testament.
Yeah.
Which is very selective on their part.
Yeah.
We're not under the Old Testament, but we're going to ignore this even though Jesus said this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm not going to lie, I spent a lot of years not tithing, not even realizing. It wasn't even like, it was ignorance,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Why do you go, ugh?
because I like to know things.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, you know, my geek factor is pretty high. So,
Yeah.
like, I literally have, you know this, I have my dictionaries, and I love ebooks because I can, what's that word mean? And I tap on it, and it gives me a definition.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, if I don't know something, I'll obviously ask questions, but I'll also do the work to find out, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
You know, like,
good.
we talked about this when I had that apologetics Bible, and you're like,
Yes.
oh, this thing's great.
Yeah.
Because I have a little bit of a doubting Thomas streak sometimes. So I need that extra level of explanation.
Yeah.
And so for tithing, for me, it's very personal because I didn't do it. I felt very convicted. And, when the church started, I was like, oh, no.
What does it mean to feel convicted?
Well, it's, wow, going to call me out.
Well, no.
Let me get my dictionary out.
Well, no.
Yeah, to feel convicted, you realize you haven't been doing the right thing.
Okay.
The second step of that is you feel convicted, but then you got to repent for it. And a lot of people think repent means, you're forgiven, but it means you're going to change your ways.
Yeah.
And so now that's why sometimes I'm so strict about it. And like, for instance, one of the things I do that's just a very personal thing, and I take a lot of stuff from Pastor Landon, I don't have it auto-deduct. I want to pray over it. I like to figure out how much it is, and still be able to give more if we're in that position. But, I look at what I made. I give my 10%, I pray over it, and then I click it.
Yeah.
It's very convenient that I can click it, but I think there's a lot of people that get that disconnect, and it doesn't mean as much because I'm not always thankful. Sometimes I'm like, I'm a little stressed this month. We've had this happen. We've had that happen. Like with our son, right, with the lease that he didn't read. And he's asking for extra money, typical college student. And I'm like, I didn't budget for this.
Yeah.
And so for me, after so many years of not tithing and not living right, it's become my first step in getting right with the Lord.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
And so I'm very deliberate with it. I do feel like you should pray over that, and you should have gratitude.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes you're like, oh man, that's a lot of money. That hurts.
Yeah.
Hey, we gotta plan the rest of our month a little differently because we didn't plan our tithe properly.
Right.
Or we had expenses that were unexpected. But then you gotta back up, get your mind right, and you gotta go, hey, first and best. Not last, worst, and whatever's left.
Right, yeah.
And so for me, it's very personal.
Awesome.
And when I started doing that, it's crazy. It's not like we need anything, but when there'd be a little bit of stress, you give it to the Lord, and
He's our provider.
He's providing, and I have to. It really is every time we get paid, it's a check for me to remember that it's actually not mine, and I'm not doing it in my own power and authority. It's all from the Lord, and it's very good for me because I have to be reminded because I tend to, typical male type A ego, I think I'm making this happen, and you forget, and it's such a good check every time I do, check twice, right? It's just a good check to remind me it's 100% the Lord's.
Yeah.
And He's letting me keep 90% of it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
He's so generous,
He is. Okay, the next question.
You didn't actually say anything about tithing yourself.
Well, the question was about budgets. And I think we talked about it. I mean, we are not very meticulous in like the Excel spreadsheet. John is, I'm not. I try to stay within the budget, okay? When it comes to tithing, I think that it's biblical and we do it.
Yes.
And when it's biblical, I'm not arguing with what the Bible says, and I'm not going to argue with what the Lord says. And I was blessed that I learned what tithe was. I tithe, and I married a man who led well in that. And so it's just like we eat, right? We tithe. It's just a normal thing for me, and we tithe first. And so after we tithe, then our budget starts. Like it's just a norm thing.
I mean, people don't seem to have a problem tipping.
Right.
Why do you have a problem tithing?
Okay, so the next question is, and they asked us about this, how often do we eat? What's the question? Do you guys?
How often do we eat out?
Yeah, compared to eating at home. And I would say 50-50.
Maybe slightly less.
What's
so
less?
So it doesn't really work because I'm on the road so much.
Yeah.
So,
when we're together, we eat a lot at home.
Yeah.
And then we'll go on a date.
And, I grew up eating out was a treat. Not every meal. We don't, I've got a couple autoimmune issues, so sometimes we can't control where we're going, what we're going to eat. But yeah, I would say we do make a point to go out at least once a week, and that's kind of an offshoot to one of your other questions. But yeah, as a general rule, we eat at home. Some of it's ego for me, I guess. I can make a steak, I think, better than most places we go to eat. Only once or twice have I ever had a steak like, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do better than that.
Right. But we do eat at home a lot because we can control what we're eating. And we want like nutrient dense meals.
Yeah.
And so we don't eat out a lot because of
Right.
that. And when we do, I love to go out to eat, but I like to control what I'm eating. So I'm just going
The
to.
other side of that, though, is I'm on the road so much. I just want to be home and have a meal and just sit down without all the racket, without all the noise, where I can sit there and we can talk back and forth.
Yeah.
We kind of have a rule in the house, like when we go to eat, phones away. The other thing we do a lot of times is no phones at the dinner table.
Yeah, and we eat at the dinner table.
And that's kind of a I think that's sort of a modern thing we've had to do because people are so enamored with their devices.
Yeah, they are.
Which she is, she does social media and all that, and I'm sort of anti.
Yeah, you don't see John on social. The next question.
Only because you make me, but
is how do we prioritize alone time? Which is also hard to ask because John is gone a lot. So we're alone a lot. We're alone a lot already. And I would say like the better question would be is how do we steward and are intentional about being alone?
I love that more. I think we do the date nights. We try to be really good about at least once a week going out on a date with just us. Every once in a while we'll mix friends in there.
Yeah. But John's gone almost half the week.
Yeah. I'm
we
gone
have
3
a
to 4
lot
days
of
a week.
alone time.
We do thank goodness for FaceTime, right?
Yeah.
FaceTime, we'll FaceTime each other a couple times. We're texting back and forth, even if it's just like the kissy face emoji thing.
Yeah.
We pretty much make sure that we have at least one night where it's just you and me.
Yeah.
Whether it's our Sabbath, we're just hanging out.
Yeah.
Do our worship in the morning at the house and do all that. And then just kind of, hey, we don't have anything we have to do.
Right.
And then we usually will throw in a date night. Sometimes like last week was kind of a prime example. We've been super busy with the kids, traveling, doing this and that. And my flight got delayed. So I'm like, let's go grab some dinner. And we just had a real simple.
At Chipotle.
Oh, that's right, Chipotle. Yeah.
Date night at Chipotle.
And we just kind of.
We squeezed it in.
Just us.
The next question is, I think it also is kind of like the cultural thing. We already talked about it a little bit. How do we set chores or assign our roles in the house?
We really don't.
We don't assign them.
I will say this. Annie likes, I'm going to laugh. I'm not sure what it is about women and dishwashers. It's all over the place. So I'll go in and
I had to
fix
wash dishes by hand growing up.
But
we didn't have a dishwasher.
I
was a dishwasher.
She'll run it and it'll be like all cattywampus. And I'm like, oh, girl, come on. So I'll go in and I'll rearrange everything.
We've had arguments about the dishwasher. And now I don't even care.
But
honestly,
the same thing.
We don't argue about that anymore.
I don't know any man that cleans as good as my wife does. So what has happened over time is she really likes to sweep and mop, but I will also vacuum and do. So I'm still kind of a see a need, feel a need. I'm still used to washing my own clothes. She'll try to do it for me, but I'll wind up doing it if it needs to be done. I absolutely don't like her trying to mow the yard.
I like being outside, so I have mowed the lawn a couple times, but John doesn't like it. It hurts his ego.
I don't know about that, but her mom.
My mom does not like it when I mow the lawn.
If she was to ever post that, her mom would be calling me, why are you letting your wife do that? I'm like, have you met your daughter?
Yeah.
I don't let her do anything.
Yeah.
But I'm very particular about the yard. I like the yard good. Neighbors used to make fun of me when I was single, man. My yard was immaculate. You get married, you don't have as much time. It's not quite as good as it used to be, but nobody gets the line straight.
Yeah.
I do the old-fashioned metal blade, and I like the line straight. I'm like, hey, babe, go look at the yard. And she's like, oh, it looks good.
We're definitely a team. We don't have roles where John is like, you have to do this, and I don't tell him he has to do that. But we like our house to be our sanctuary, and so we steward our house like that. And then I love to serve my husband, and you like to serve me.
Well, I'll come home and the house is spotless, and I just love that, and I always thank her for that. But it's not a division of duties. So this is women's work or this is men's work. I don't operate in that, or never have. And that's, thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
She taught me that do what you can do. And I also had a twin sister, and I think that helped.
Yeah. Yeah, it has.
What's the word I'm saying? Even me out in that regard.
Yeah, because we're definitely a team.
Yeah, we're definitely a team. We do wind up doing so. Like, for instance, I'm not going to mop the floor because guess what? I'm not going to do it to her standard.
And I like to mop.
And she
like,
likes
I
it.
like to mop because I like my floors clean.
Who likes to mop? I don't understand it.
My mom and me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we do chores, or if there's a lot going on, I'll get in there and, like, she hates the sink being full before we go to bed, and I could care less.
Yeah.
So then, but because I know that she doesn't like that, and it, like, bothers her, like, I don't think you can go to sleep if the sink's got dishes in it. So
I can't.
if she's doing something or she's talking, whatever, and I'm in there, I'm like, oh, okay, and I'll just do it. And she's like, oh, thanks,
Yeah.
You get the same reaction when I do that as I do when you cook food for me.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that we are a team like that, and I know what like makes you feel loved and honored, and vice versa. And for me, the acts of service are like we're there to serve one another, and we do.
But on that we don't really assign each other things, but I'll say, hey, I need you to go look at this thing when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Or she'll have it's a honey-do list. She'll like, hey, this isn't working right, or that isn't working right, and then I'll figure out how to fix it or something when I'm home.
Yeah,
it works.
Okay.
No stress.
Our next question, almost our final one. What are our family values? What are our family values? I know, like, we talked about it a little bit.
Well, serving the Lord.
We talked about the Bible verse.
Joshua, where for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. I may be butchering it a little bit. And, it's not, a lot of people think they've got to be perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about striving to do the Lord's will. And then secondarily, with the blended family, we're trying to show our kids this comes first, serve the Lord.
Yeah.
And then the other things in life, and then, of course, so if I was to break it down 1, 2, 3, right? Serve the Lord.
Excellent.
Well, show our kids, be the example for them, which we both, I feel like, in the last 4 years have gotten much better at that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, everything we do in excellence.
Yes.
Without getting so caught up on excellence that you ruin things, you know what I mean? Because I used to be,
because we're human.
Well, perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Excellence versus being perfect. And then effort. You said it, leading by example.
Now, I'm not one of these people that says, oh, I did my best, and that's an excuse for not doing good work or being a good person or doing that. There are times when doing your best is truly your best, but when it's an excuse, it's really not acceptable, and we need to,
We're very authentic.
Especially with our boys, we've got to kind of push them a little bit, because I feel like boys...
Because we're trying to raise men.
We're trying to raise men, and they've been taught, just because of society nowadays, that, they take the easy way out. Not necessarily the easy way out, but they'll take the path of least resistance. And sometimes doing those hard things is you got to face right into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm definitely one of these people that believes that adversity, iron sharpens iron, adversity, that's where that comes, adversity sharpens you and makes you better.
Yeah.
Because when you come through the other side, you're like, oh, when you're experiencing whatever it might be, you think it's the worst thing ever.
It's hard.
And then when you get through the other side, you're like, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And then you're better off for it. And then, philosophically, you tend to, it changes your mindset a little bit.
Yeah.
Gratitude and whatnot.
I would say, just to sum them up, excellence, effort, we lead by example, we're very authentic, and then loving. We say things, we do the hard things, and we say the hard things in love.
Yeah, so you talked about blended families, just to go back to that. So Grayson and I are very much alike. We're not big huggers.
They're very much alike. It's like copy, paste.
Right. We're very much not, I don't mind hugging people, but we're not physically affectionate with people. We actually harass them if we like them. And, you and Joey are the opposite. And so us together has actually brought you a little more my way and me a lot more your way. It's Grayson as well. My son adores you because you dote on him and he doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
But he loves it.
Yeah.
So.
It's fun to have.
Well, they like it.
The big guys.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to close with this. What does it mean for you to walk in the calling that God placed on your life and do hard things? What does it mean to be bold?
I didn't read that one in your thing. What does it mean?
Well, that's what the podcast is about.
I mean, so it's really funny. I find it very interesting. I'm kind of boisterous and loud and a jokester.
Yes.
And so to be bold for the Lord. So I tend to get, so for instance, we have some of the best, we've gone to many other churches when we're in Phoenix. Well, but like when we're in Phoenix and we go visit other places and we're like, church culture's better, and it's, but it talks to the quality of the pastors and their speaking abilities or their ability to teach and the messages they give. And so we have some very quiet, mild-mannered pastors who get on stage and are fire. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm the guy that's loud and sometimes obnoxious, I think. I laugh about it, but the boldness that they have on stage, I'm the exact opposite. So I've always wanted to be more bold for the Lord, and it's constantly have to work. For instance, this podcast. I don't want to be in front of a camera. Never have, never will.
But don't we like him in front of the camera, everyone?
Yeah. Oh, you're going to throw that out there? Okay, yeah. Okay. No, but my point being is, how can I be like that? And then when it comes to the Lord, I'm quiet. I'm nervous to pray in front of people because maybe I don't sound right, or I'm not as articulate, or I don't have these grandiose prayers like other people, which obviously I know doesn't matter. But again, the hard thing from my perspective, for me, like, you'll stop and talk to anybody and pray over them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm over here praying with you, but I'm quiet. You know what I mean? So the hard thing is to be bold for the Lord, and out loud. Mm-hmm. So that there's no question, I guess. For me personally, that's the hard thing, being bold. I'm better than I was, but I could be a whole lot better.
Yeah.
I don't know. Good answer or no?
That's your answer.
That's my answer?
Yeah. I mean, I ask everyone that
at
the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Is like, what does it mean to be bold?
Like, I don't have a problem with excellence. I don't have a problem trying hard things, but that is the area, like, going flying a plane.
Yeah,
right?
like you're talking about your struggle.
Yeah.
Like,
my struggle is to be bold for the Lord, even by myself, in front of people, because I tend to be, my giftings is, knowledge and learning and administration. Those tend to be back behind. And I have to remind myself that not all warriors fight in the front.
Right.
Like, I have no desire to be up on stage, be a pastor. I'll do.
You want to be behind the scenes.
I don't care. I'll do anything.
Yeah.
But I have no desire. But that's the self-conscious thing. Like,
yeah.
I know.
It's like, Lord, what are you saying? Where do you want me?
Right. My sister and several people have prophesied that I should be a teacher because I tend to be Mr. Book guy and I have knowledge, but I don't have. I would have to work on the skill of imparting that knowledge in a productive way.
Yeah.
But like I said, praying in front of people. So
for you, being bold is being loud for the Lord.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Being loud, showing excitement, showing the emotion for the Lord.
Because you're very stoic.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm very stoic at times. I can be, unless I'm mad about something.
How do you think that you're bold already? Like, what does it mean for you and how you are walking in the calling that God placed on your life with authority?
Well, I know what I know and I think what I think. And I have no problem speaking with people about how I feel and what I think about things. But again, when it comes to spiritual maturity and in that setting, praying over people, maybe leading people, being out front, I tend to want to be quiet about it, and I think I need to be more bold. I'm still kind of going back to the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you could help me dial it in. See, because you can already see it sort of, even talking about it kind of makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's so weird. And it's so weird because, like, I'm asking you how you're being bold and you're not answering it. Okay. You're saying how I could be bold, how if I was louder for the Lord and I was more publicly, visibly on fire, then that would mean I'm bold. But you're saying that you're comfortable being in the background and you are a warrior, like, in the shadows, and it's not a bad thing, but you're not owning it. Right. And so I'm also surprised that you're like tiptoeing
which is
around
not something
the
I
question.
Normally do. I'm usually the bull in the china shop.
You lead well and you're strong, but now I'm saying, like, I'm literally closing with, okay, how do you walk in the calling that God placed on your life? And you're like, well, if I was this,
I see.
But you're not saying, so what did God say over me?
Bold? Okay, I'm bold in the area that I really have a heart for the young men in the church. You know, we always joke about the betas and the soy boys and all this stuff, and like our own sons that are a little bit, they take the easy route. So I guess I could say where I'm bold is I have no issue letting guys know, hey, this is how to be a man.
Yeah.
And we have several guys that we're not going to mention by name that we're always trying to, speak into them.
John is way sweeter than me when it comes to this, which is so shocking. Like, I will say the thing way more direct, and John will be way more gentle about it. And I'm like, but it's a man, it's a guy.
I don't know if I'm gentle about it because, women have this idea that men are just this rock. Okay. And what they don't understand is all the little comments are little chips. They're little chips because we have broad shoulders for a reason. But a lot of men feel like they're doing it by themselves. And, we're very much empowering women, but sometimes I feel like we forget these young men that have so many mixed messages today. Mm-hmm. You don't have the right to say anything. You don't have the right to an opinion. You don't have the right to all these things. And, a bold man generally knows what he wants, what he thinks. And the way you learn that is through knowledge and experience and life. But, I guess where I'm bold is I quietly build up these young men in the church and let them know that, no, you need to stand up.
Yeah, and don't believe the lies of the enemy. You have broad shoulders
for a reason.
Yeah.
Your job is to protect and provide and lead.
Yeah. Not
go with the flow, get in line, and do what everybody else tells you to do. So I guess if that was bold, I guess the reason I had such a hard time answering it is because it doesn't appear bold on the outside, maybe.
Okay.
When it's, because my struggle is obviously to be bold for the Lord in an outward fashion, but boldness doesn't always have to be loud.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Interesting. I learned a few things about myself just now.
That's awesome.
Love it when the wife helps peel back the onion a little bit.
This is good, though, also because in marriage, you are to call out the things in others, good or bad, in a loving way.
And it's not one-directional, and that's part of the problem. We have a lot of folks where it seems like a one-way street, and everybody's telling these guys what they got to do, what they got to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes because the Lord's telling you.
Yes.
And you're not listening.
Yeah, just ask God.
Yeah. Ask the Lord, lay it at his feet.
Yeah.
Because, I used to tell you, I can walk through a mile of glass on my knees as long as I know what I'm doing it for.
Yeah.
And, and you have to be patient.
Yeah.
You were talking about how you're direct with guys, but when you're hitting on that nerve, because men are prideful, generally speaking, we have very healthy egos as a general rule.
Yeah.
We're not humble. And like Pastor Chima said, gentle.
Yes. Gentleness,
we tend
fruits of the
to
Spirit.
only show anger, and then we tend to not, follow our calling in that regard.
Yeah.
And so you have to be bold, and you have to stand up.
Yeah. Thank you, honey.
All right, sweetie.
Thank you.
Roundabout answer there, but.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you, everyone, for watching the Worthy Podcast. I would love if you can go back, subscribe, like, share with a friend so we can get the word out there. And I hope you found this episode of value.